Hey everybody, how we doing today? So welcome to the beginner's guide to catching a Florida Keys tarpon number 5. In this video, we're going to talk about matching up the location that we found with the best type of bait that's going to maximize our chance of getting a tarpon. Just like all of my fishing, I focus on the 3 core factors. 1, go to where the fish are. 2, fish when they feed. And 3, use what they're eating. Alright, so we've talked about finding those fish, look for activity, look for rolling tarpon, look for flats boats with 2 or 3 people on them. Then we went through and discussed all the different, the magic hour, the golden hour of basically a half an hour from sunset to a half an hour after sunset is my golden hour, but also that hot bite at nighttime or right at sunup, okay? And getting out of that mindset, oh, I want to go catch a tarpon when it's convenient for me. No, we want to go when they're feeding. And then the third part is use what they're eating. And that's kind of what this video is going to be about. Try to match the bait that we would find in that location that you found to find those, to catch that tarpon. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to head out to Shark Channel, hit a few different areas that's pretty much going to be similar to all the keys around up and down the Florida Keys, and kind of go point by point on what I would utilize for those different circumstances. Now we do have to kind of keep in mind, all right, what we're looking to do is to figure this out on our own, or you to figure it out on your own, depending on where you're at and your circumstances. Now, of course, a professional guide that's fishing 7 days a week and knows all the areas and knows the feeding patterns and knows the tide patterns and knows all the different circumstances for a certain area, what to use to catch that tarpon, yeah, it's going to be great. But we're not looking to spend $500 or $1,000. What we're looking to do is be able to individually go out, find an area, figure out which bait to use, and to do all these steps to those 3 characteristics to maximize our chance of catching our first tarpon. All right. So even though, yeah, there's going to be people who say, oh, my uncles, cousins, sisters, neighbors, postman's daughter's boyfriend's dentist, he caught one on a hot dog. That's what you should use. All right. We're not looking for that. And if you happen to have caught one on a hot dog, that's great. But what I'm giving you guys is the things, the ideas, the concepts to kind of look at, to figure out in your particular circumstance that's going to give you the best chance at catching your first tarpon. So anyways, let's go head out to the water. Let's talk about the bridges. Now, for which bait is best? The easy answer is go to the local tackle shop, buy that bridge. All right? Because they're going to tell you, because each bridge is almost a total separate entity. So one bridge might be mullet, one might be pinfish, one might be blue crabs, okay? And those bait shops are the ones that's supplying the fishermen and the guides. So they're going to sell 500 blue crabs on the weekend and 20 pinfish. Reason being, because those tarpon are keyed in on that single individual bait. So go to the source and you'll know it. I could tell you the predominant baits are primarily blue crabs. I'd say it's probably about 60% of it. I'd say 25% of it is live mullet, and then 15% other type of baits between pinfish or artificials. So it's a very specific bait, it's very specific setups. In general, what you're doing, because you're fishing suspended fish, you're going to be utilizing a bobber rig. So a bobber placed at a certain depth, down line to your circle hook or live bait hook, and depending on the current, you might even run a split shots to keep that bait down, especially if you're using like a blue crab, whereas a mullet might be just live line. But it's all about the depth, figuring out where those tarpon are sitting, and then placing that bait to go right in front of their face or slightly above it, and just constantly drifting it back. Key things to look out for is you want a natural drift, especially for blue crabs, okay? You want that line to be just straight perpendicular to the top, so just straight down. And then you want it just following that current, just slowly, no pressure. As soon as you put pressure on that bobber, that blue crab is going to kick up. It's going to be sitting on the top. Unnatural, they're not going to eat it. Same thing is you don't want to just throw it out there and just let it bounce in the back behind you, because it'll automatically get caught in that current and it'll be flapping on the surface. It takes a lot more work, so you got to cast it up current, drift it down, let out line to as far as you're comfortable, bring it back in, throw it. So it's a bit of work. Versus like a mullet, you just go up current of it, run that mullet back, it just swims behind in that current there waiting for a bite. So just know the setups and you'll be all good. All right, let's talk about the flats. All right, the flats, artificials. All right, the main reason why is, if you saw my video about the week in review, where I was basically, every cast I was throwing it right on top of those tarpon and watching them explode in fear and running away, okay? That's the general principle, but just not the actual way to do it. What artificials do is let you to spot up and spot cast and cast to certain spots where it's much more difficult to try to cast a bait and not like splash and bomb those tarpon away, or to try to get them to swim in a certain spot. So that's where artificials come into play, whether it be soft plastics, whether it be throwing a fly. The other thing is you can't throw a pinfish because it's only a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot deep. They'll instantly go right into the weeds. Mullet would be working good if you can basically troll them into the area and hold them and suspend them. But again, it becomes a problem of trying to get a live mullet to go where you want it to. So that's why artificials are the way to go. I'm actually holding back not using the 9-inch paddle tail because, as you saw, that thing makes a big splash. So when I'm doing pinpoint accuracies, this is actually like a little 7-inch Hobie I dug out. I throw the 9s usually, but in this thinner water, clearer water, I want a little bit of a less of a presentation than that big 9-inch. The big 9-inch one is great when those mullet schools are open big water and those fish are feeding on the mullet. But out here, really, they're digging through, looking for crabs, looking for little shellfish, little smaller minnows. So their focus is a lot more narrow than seeing a big old 9-inch bait swimming in front of their head. And especially that if you throw it within 10 feet of them, it's going to cause them to like freak out and take off. Your basic strategy is cast way beyond where they're at and draw it so it comes out somewhat away from them, but towards the way they're facing, so they can see it. Remember, they've got good eyesight, so you don't have to put it right in front of their nose, but you want it towards their head side so they will actually see it. Okay, what we have here is just a basin. So it's not any direct inline current. This is Shark Channel over here. So that's where the general water flows out to the Atlantic and to the Gulf. This happens to be just a little side basin with a little bit of depth. So in these situations, I like to use the good old bobber system again. Controlled bait. I would go for a grunt or a live pinfish. The reason being is that I could suspend in that water column. There's not a lot of water movement, so it's basically just going to be sitting in that certain area. So a lot of times I like to spot fish, keep an eye out, look for a rolling fish, feeding fish, go to that area, anchor up current from it, drop that bait back, and just have that bait suspended in that pocket where I know the fish are. If I just don't know that where they specifically are, but that they're there somewhere, then I'll put a bait out on the bobber again, suspended, but then I'll come off anchor and just slow drift with either the current or the wind and basic cover ground. So that bait will still be suspended right in that strike zone, but yet you'll be drifting along slowly with the current or with the wind, and that's going to cover the more surface area. So that's kind of more like blind drifting is what we're going to be doing. Also, you can do like top water, my 9-inch paddle tail, throw the Hoagies, artificials. So a lot of times I'll do that is I'll have that bait drifting back on my bobber while I'm standing up and just spot casting at rolling fish. All right, let's talk outlets. So you have all the water coming from the Gulf of Mexico flushing out, going over the flats and then flushing everything out in a kind of a bottleneck there. And that's where it's kind of a free-for-all. It's you're looking for periods of different baits being predominant. Early in the season when the mullet run's going on and all these borderline edges of the mangroves have mullet in them, in the evening they flush out, you use mullet. Or you throw the Hogies, or if you throw my 9-inch paddle tail. Every evening on an outgoing tide, it'll flush bait out, which includes crabs. And then that's what's the bait evening, right up to dark, even through the nighttime. Crabs will release from wherever they're at, and they'll flow out with the current outgoing. And those, the tarpon know, it will just wait for them over there and suck them up as they go by. I also use pinfish and grunt, just drifting along. So they're basically just moving on up and then sitting in the channel, just looking up, waiting for anything to come by. So a suspended bait just worked that way, works great as well. Really it comes down to, you can kind of keep an eye and see what they're doing. If you know there's tarpon there, but they're not busting and feeding, then most likely a crab or a pinfish. If you see them really rolling and busting really loudly along the top, then mullet, possibly crabs as well, or like now the Pallola worm hatch. There we go. There we go. Oh, that turn. Oh, knew it. Couldn't turn fast enough. Ah, dang it. What happened? Something did not work correctly. Ah, broke me off. Son of a. That's all I could say about that. Dang it. Just chafed me off and broke me there. Crap. Okay, we're back. Now I hope you liked that little jaunt on the water and looking at the little different types of habitat that we've got here in the Florida Keys. I'm sure the bodies of water that you're going to be fishing are going to have something similar to those. But the key takeaway is still focusing on those three characteristics and separating your own kind of personal choice and kind of levitating toward more, what's the tarpon going to want, okay, for this first tarpon, all right? After that, you're on your own, okay? If you want to go whip a fly all day long, feel free. If you want to use live shrimp, do it, okay? But this initial one, to kind of break that ice and kind of get that itch scratched, all right? Use the tools that are going to give you the best chance of getting that result of catching that first tarpon. And it's by thinking outside of your mentality and getting into the head of the tarpon and giving them what they want. All right. So hopefully you found that somewhat helpful. We'll do a couple more videos about fine-tuning things and getting your first tarpon. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.